Oh, I don't care if I'm remembered as an artist. You'll be remembered or you won't be remembered. I'm Scott Hyde. I'm a freelance photographer. That's what I've been all my life. I always used 35 millimeter black and white cameras like this one, which I carry around in my pocket in a gab bag. So now they're digital. Oh, I love the digital cameras. You can shoot like a machine gun. You don't have to stop and reload the film every 36 exposures, you know. And so I shoot at a wild rate.
Are you ever without that camera?
No, not far. I shower and shave without it because it doesn't hold up good in the shower.
My name's Renee Dantes. I am the archivist for Scott Hyde. Whenever I started, I said, you know, there's probably at least 5,000 or 6,000 pictures in this thing, and I was like, it's going to take me forever. And then I looked at the negatives and I realized in one box there was about 20,000. So I knew then I was wrong. And that it was going to take me a lot longer than a few years to do this.
My pictures, I have pictures in museums all around, and some in Europe, I guess. Britain, I know for sure, but I don't follow that. Getting famous is not my goal. I'm not in the least bit interested in being famous.
Really, the mission for what the archive has become is so that the public and sort of art history can be informed by what he actually did in his lifetime, which was take interesting shots of not only visual art photography, but the streets of New York City, buildings being constructed, the jazz musicians.
I was good friends with a musician named Bob Duro. He's not so well known now. He was a fine piano player, singer, and arranger, and worked a lot around the music scene and got me in touch with people in that world.
Bob Duro, he had jam sessions in his apartment, and there are photographs of the vantage points of Scott being on the floor looking up at the drummer. He's underneath the table and he's getting these great shots with cigarette smoke in the air and these strange things hanging on the wall, but these people are doing what they love.
And there's Birdland, and there's Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk, all those fine 50s, 60s jazz musicians. Charlie Parker would show up late, but he was a bad boy, but fine musician, you know. Oh, they were pretty cool. They were just folks. I sold a few of my own pictures, which to album people, and got acquainted that way. And they were nice. I think they paid a red hot $100 or something like that.
It wasn't until I realized that, or I was looking through some of these pictures, much like the ones that are in here, that there was a photograph of Robert Watts, Roy Lichtenstein, and Robert Filiu sitting at one of their kitchen tables. I was like, Scott, did you know these people? And at that moment I knew I would never be as cool as him, and the stuff that I was working on was far more important than just pieces of paper that he wanted me to put together.
I can't believe what she's done for me with all this stuff. I'd have probably dumped it all by now.
The scope of what is here is not only his negatives, but his prints, the books that he was a part of, the postcards. We have correspondence from people like Allen Ginsberg. When he took a photograph of Allen on TV, he sent it to Allen, and then Allen sent him a postcard with thanks, and then there was another correspondence later of asking another question. So these connections and this web that exists around Scott is really interesting, and it needs to be told, and so that's what my job now is.
Did you know Andy Warhol?
Very briefly. I did a picture of Andy one time. I had a project where I did 24 artists' left hands in collaboration with a Robert Filiu, and he cooked up this notion of doing artists' hands, some of them European friends of his, and artists friends of mine, and we did Andy's left hand.
Phil Yu found Scott through George Brecht, and the hand show was actually taken mainly here in the United States. Scott was here, and then it was shown primarily in Europe. There's a box that Robert had made that has 24 of the hands, and it has John Cage, and it has Roy Lichtenstein and Klaus Oldenburg, Allison Knowles, Ayo. It has Scott, and it has Robert. It has Andy Warhol in it. It has Jasper Johns. It has Ray Johnson. There's so many. I can't always remember all of their names, but there's both European and American artists. And one time I asked him, well, why didn't you get Rauschenberg while you were at it? He's like, he was overseas.
Oh, I thought it was an interesting device, an interesting process and technique and notion, and an excuse for making pictures.
The Tiffany windows designer for Tiffany's jewelry store, he used 5 of the hands in his Tiffany's windows displays. And so there's watches and cufflinks and that sort of thing in front of the 5 hands. And they each got their own window, and it's very interesting to see how they used those very large blown up hands that I believe all 5 of those now are at MoMA, but the hands were used in very interesting ways.
And when we had the pictures published, there was some crosstalk and input from people who specialized in palmistry and gave insights on the hands, but I didn't involve myself in that. I involved myself on making the patterns in the hand visible. Those were very rich years in the evolution of art. I was very interested in modern art, especially when you get to New York, and there's the Museum of Modern Art and the Guggenheim and other fine museums. But I continued as an art photographer and eventually applied for and got a Guggenheim fellowship.
All of the big New York museums, they have his holdings. He is in Lima, Peru, Israel. I believe those are some of the images of the synagogues in New York. And then there's also some at Tate. There's some in France, the National Gallery in France. He's pretty much all over. In 2015, I went up and looked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and in MoMA's collection and to see what all they had. And it's actually really funny about MoMA. When Scott still lived in New York and was in the 60s or 70s, he would go to MoMA and ask to see his box. And so they'd bring it out, they'd give it to him, they'd leave the room. He would look through it, but then he'd stash a couple of extra prints. So when I went back to look at his box at MoMA, I had to tell them that they had some prints they needed to a session because they didn't know they were there. So that's the sort of thing that it's endearing, and it shows the playful nature of Scott and his work, and I absolutely love that about everything that he does.
She's gonna make me famous.
I'm not making you famous, I'm making you relevant. There's a difference.
I don't look through the camera to be captured. I just look with my poor old eyeballs, and if something gathers me up, I whoop out my camera.